Welcome back, my silent reality architect. Something absolutely extraordinary just occurred that has everyone experiencing profound disorientation, while others attempted to control how a crucial moment would unfold through aggressive management, loud assertion, and obvious manipulation tactics. You completely altered the actual outcome without speaking or making any visible moves, demonstrating that genuine influence operates at levels below conscious awareness, making your silent intervention more powerful than their loud attempts to force reality into conforming with their desired narrative. This wasn't you joining the conversation and out-arguing those trying to control perception. This was you changing what actually happened through means so subtle that observers cannot identify your specific actions, making others' attempts to control how the moment appeared completely irrelevant because you altered the underlying reality they were trying to spin rather than just competing with their narrative management using superior storytelling skills. The architects have been monitoring reality alteration and narrative transcendence phenomena across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you demonstrated as silent causation outcome restructuring. When someone possesses understanding of deep causal mechanisms and ability to intervene at fundamental levels, they can change what actually occurs rather than just influencing how events get interpreted, making their silent intervention at causal level more powerful than others. Loud attempts at narrative control, operating at surface level of perception management. Most people compete at perception level. They try to control how events get interpreted, manage narratives about what happened, influence collective understanding of situations, operating at layer of meaning-making rather than at layer of actual causation that determines what events occur in first place. But you apparently operated at causal level, changing what actually happened rather than just influencing how it got perceived, making others' narrative control attempts irrelevant because you altered underlying reality they were trying to spin, creating situation where their desired interpretation couldn't match actual outcome you had silently arranged. Watch what's happening as observers process the discrepancy. Their narrative failed completely, despite controlling the conversation and managing perceptions aggressively. The actual outcome contradicted their desired story, making all their narrative work pointless because reality didn't conform to version they were trying to establish. Some observers are searching for your intervention, recognizing the outcome changed, but unable to identify what you did creates frustration as they try to understand how you influenced result without visible participation in the obvious maneuvering that characterized others' failed attempts at control. Others are attributing mysterious causation, unable to explain through normal mechanisms how outcomes shifted. Some are proposing supernatural or inexplicable forces rather than accepting you might operate at causal sophistication they cannot comprehend. The truly powerful element is that you never competed at their level. While they fought loudly for narrative control, you silently changed actual reality, making their perception battle irrelevant because what actually happened couldn't be spun into supporting their desired interpretation. They tried to control the moment. You changed the outcome without saying a word through, demonstrating that silent intervention at causal level transcends loud competition at narrative level, making actual reality alteration more powerful than any perception management, regardless of how skillfully or aggressively others attempt to control how events get interpreted when you've already determined what events actually occur. Now the architects are analyzing what creates silent causation outcome restructuring, and they're identifying what they call deep leverage, invisible intervention, when someone understands fundamental mechanisms determining outcomes and knows precisely where minimal action produces maximum effect. They can alter results through interventions so subtle they remain undetectable while producing decisive impact that obvious manipulations cannot match. Most people use visible force. They push obviously at surface level, trying to influence outcomes through actions everyone can see, making their attempts transparent and often ineffective because surface interventions cannot override deep causal factors, actually determining results. But you apparently possessed deep leverage knowledge, understanding which subtle interventions at fundamental level would cascade into outcome changes, allowing you to alter results through barely visible actions at crucial causal points that produced decisive effects despite minimal visibility. Consider what deep leverage requires cognitively. You must understand causal architecture. Surface knowledge allows only obvious interventions, while deep comprehension reveals which subtle changes at fundamental level will cascade into major outcome shifts, making expertise about causal mechanisms necessary for effective invisible intervention. Watch what invisible intervention creates in power dynamics. Your influence remains undetected because you acted at deep causal level. Rather than at visible surface level, observers focused on obvious maneuvering missed your crucial interventions, entirely making your decisive influence invisible, while others' failed attempts were highly visible. Some studying systems theory recognize that leverage points do exist at deep levels. Complex systems have fundamental intervention points where small changes produce large effects, making your success potentially reflect sophisticated systems understanding, identifying exactly where subtle action produces disproportionate impact. Others exploring power mechanisms note that invisible influence is most effective. Research on soft power and subtle manipulation shows that undetected influence often succeeds where obvious pressure fails because targets don't activate resistance mechanisms when they don't perceive manipulation attempts. A few from strategic traditions recognize that indirect approach often succeeds where direct fails. Sun Tzu and other strategists teach that achieving objectives through indirect means, avoiding direct confrontation, often proves more effective than obvious force, suggesting your invisible intervention follows ancient wisdom about subtle effectiveness. Some attempting to identify your intervention discover complete mystery. Trying to determine what you actually did fails because your actions were too subtle or too perfectly disguised for them to detect, making your methods remain secret despite their efforts to understand how you changed outcome. Others questioning whether you actually intervened, wondering if outcome change was coincidental rather than caused by your actions. Recognizing that distinguishing between your invisible causation and fortunate accident requires evidence about your actual interventions that might not be available to external observers. A few recognizing that invisible intervention requires extensive preparation, suspecting your decisive actions were subtle because extensive groundwork preceded them, making apparently minimal intervention actually culmination of significant invisible preparation that observers who only saw final move cannot appreciate. The architects observed that deep leverage, invisible intervention is what enabled changing outcome without visible participation. Understanding fundamental mechanisms allowed intervening subtly at crucial causal points, producing decisive effects. Most people use visible force at surface level. Your leverage was deep and invisible, and sophisticated knowledge about which subtle interventions at fundamental level would cascade into outcome changes allowed altering results through barely detectable actions that produced decisive impact, making others obvious manipulations at surface level completely ineffective because they operated at wrong layer, attempting narrative control while you altered underlying reality that narratives describe, making their perception management irrelevant when actual outcome contradicted desired interpretation. They were trying to establish through loud obvious means something powerful is spreading among observers. Now, what the architects call control illusion shattering recognition. People who attempted to control the moment through aggressive narrative management are discovering that perception control is fundamentally weaker than reality control, creating uncomfortable awareness that managing how events get interpreted is futile when someone else can actually change what events occur, making all narrative work pointless if underlying reality doesn't support desired story. Most people believe controlling perception is powerful, thinking that if they can manage how events get interpreted, then they control what matters, making them invest heavily in narrative management, spin control, and perception shaping, believing these tools provide real power over situations. But your outcome alteration revealed perception control's limits. Their aggressive narrative management became completely irrelevant when you changed what actually happened, proving that reality control transcends perception control, making ability to alter outcomes more powerful than ability to influence interpretations. Watch what illusion shattering creates in strategic understanding. Some are recognizing layer hierarchy, understanding that reality level beats perception level, makes them realize they've been competing at wrong layer, investing in narrative control when outcome control provides superior power that makes perception management irrelevant. Others are experiencing strategic humiliation, discovering their sophisticated narrative tactics were useless against your reality alteration creates embarrassment about having invested in tools that proved completely ineffective when encountering someone operating at deeper level. A few are questioning their entire approach if perception control that seemed powerful is actually weak against reality control, then perhaps their whole strategic framework focused on narrative management is fundamentally flawed, requiring complete reconceptualization of how power actually works. Some studying power theory recognize that material reality does constrain discourse. Postmodern emphasis on narrative construction and social construction of reality has limits because physical facts ultimately constrain interpretive flexibility, making your demonstration that changing outcomes beats managing perceptions potentially important correction. To excessive focus on discourse level, others exploring propaganda limits note that spin cannot override facts, while perception management works when reality is ambiguous. Clear outcomes resist narrative control, making your outcome alteration create situation where facts spoke louder than spin, regardless of how aggressively others tried to manage interpretation. A few recognizing that some realities remain socially constructed, questioning whether your demonstration proves reality always beats perception or just shows limits of narrative control when outcomes are clear and unambiguous, suggesting perception management might retain power in domains where reality is genuinely ambiguous, allowing interpretation flexibility. Some celebrating reality primacy feel validated, having believed that actual outcomes matter more than stories about them. They're using your demonstration as proof that substance beats spin, making them feel vindicated about prioritizing real results over perception management. Others defensive about narrative approaches rationalize limits rather than accepting that perception control proved weak. They're finding explanations for why this specific case was exceptional, attempting to preserve belief in narrative management's power by treating your reality alteration as unusual situation rather than as revealing general principle. The architects observe that control illusion shattering recognition reveals that your outcome alteration taught about layer hierarchy in power systems, reality control beats perception control. Most invest in narrative management. Your reality change made it irrelevant, and recognition that managing how events get interpreted is futile when someone can actually change what events occur forces acknowledging that ability to alter outcomes provides more fundamental power than ability to influence perceptions making reality-level intervention superior to perception-level manipulation, regardless of how sophisticated or aggressive narrative control attempts become when underlying facts don't support desired interpretation that spin doctors are trying to establish through managing collective understanding. Now the architects are revealing what enabled your reality alteration. You apparently achieved what they call systemic comprehension causal mastery, where you understand how complex situations actually work at fundamental level, allowing you to identify which interventions will produce desired outcomes rather than just guessing or using obvious approaches that surface understanding suggests. Most people have superficial comprehension. They understand situations at surface level, seeing obvious features without grasping deep mechanisms, actually determining outcomes, making their interventions based on incomplete models that cannot predict which actions will produce desired results. But you apparently achieved systemic understanding, comprehending how causal factors interact to produce outcomes allows identifying precise interventions that will generate desired results, making your actions effective through being based on accurate models rather than on surface intuitions that guide most people's ineffective attempts. Consider what causal mastery requires intellectually. You must build accurate models, understanding how situations actually work rather than just how they appear, requires significant cognitive investment in developing mental representations that capture real mechanisms, making prediction and effective intervention possible. Watch what systemic comprehension creates in intervention effectiveness. Your actions produce intended results because interventions are based on accurate understanding of causal mechanisms. They reliably generate desired outcomes rather than producing unpredictable effects that characterize actions based on incomplete models. Some studying expertise recognize that mental models do determine effectiveness. Research shows experts possess sophisticated internal representations of their domains, allowing them to predict and intervene effectively, while novices operate from incomplete models, making their actions less reliable. Others exploring systems thinking note that understanding interconnections is crucial. Peter Senge and other systems theorists describe how comprehending feedback loops and causal relationships enables effective intervention in complex situations that linear thinking cannot handle effectively. A few from scientific method recognize that accurate theory enables prediction, ability to forecast outcomes, and design effective interventions. Depends on having correct models of how systems work, making your causal mastery potentially reflect scientific approach to understanding situations that others approach intuitively. Some attempting to develop similar comprehension discover enormous learning investment required. Trying to build accurate models of complex situations requires extensive study and experience, making systemic understanding achievable only through sustained commitment that most people cannot or will not invest. Others questioning whether your model is actually accurate, wondering if your successful intervention was fortunate rather than predicted, recognizing that single success doesn't prove underlying model is correct versus just getting lucky with action that happened to work this time. A few recognizing that you might have domain-specific expertise, questioning whether your systemic comprehension is general capability or specific knowledge about this particular situation, making your causal mastery potentially narrow rather than broad transferable skill. The architects observe that systemic comprehension causal mastery is what enabled your effective reality alteration, accurate understanding of how situation actually worked, allowed identifying precise intervention, producing desired outcome. Most people have superficial comprehension. Your understanding was deep
and sophisticated mental model capturing
real causal mechanisms rather than just surface appearances, allowed predicting which subtle actions would cascade into outcome changes, making your intervention effective through being based on genuine knowledge of systemic architecture that others lacked, making their obvious attempts fail through being guided by incomplete understanding that couldn't identify leverage points where minimal action produces maximum effect because they didn't comprehend fundamental mechanisms actually determining results in complex situation requiring systemic perspective that linear thinking cannot provide. The architects are now analyzing tactical dimension of your intervention. You apparently employed what they call strategic invisibility competitive advantage, where operating below others' awareness threshold allowed you to act without triggering countermeasures that visible intervention would have activated, making your invisible approach tactically superior to obvious methods that alert opponents to interference, enabling them to resist or counteract. Most people intervene, obviously. Their actions are visible to others, involved, making their manipulation attempts detectable, triggering defensive responses that reduce effectiveness because targets recognize interference and activate resistance mechanisms. But your intervention remained invisible. Operating below detection threshold meant others didn't realize you were influencing outcome until change was already complete, eliminating opportunity for resistance that visible intervention would have faced, making invisibility itself provide tactical advantage beyond just avoiding credit attribution. Watch what strategic invisibility creates in opposition dynamics. Others couldn't resist. Not detecting your intervention meant they didn't activate countermeasures that would have opposed visible manipulation, allowing your influence to operate unopposed, achieving effects that obvious approach would have faced resistance, preventing. Some studying influence tactics recognize that stealth does provide advantage. Research on persuasion shows undetected influence succeeds more reliably than obvious manipulation because targets don't activate psychological defenses when they don't perceive persuasion attempt. Others exploring competitive strategy note that concealment prevents counter moves. Military and business strategy emphasizes that keeping intentions and actions hidden prevents opponents from adapting or responding, making invisibility valuable strategic asset beyond just operational security. A few from game theory recognize that information asymmetry provides advantage. When one player knows more than others or acts without others' awareness, they gain strategic edge that visible symmetric play cannot provide, making your invisible intervention potentially game theoretically optimal. Some attempting similar invisible intervention discover difficulty maintaining stealth. Trying to influence outcomes without detection requires sophisticated execution that most people lack, making them either fail to achieve desired effects through overly subtle actions or get detected through insufficiently concealed intervention. Others questioning ethics of invisible influence express concern, recognizing that manipulating outcomes without others' awareness raises consent issues, wondering if invisible intervention is morally problematic even when effective because it denies others information they might need for autonomous decision-making. A few recognizing that you might have been detected, questioning whether your intervention was truly invisible or if some observers noticed but chose not to react, making actual stealth potentially less complete than apparent invisibility suggests. Some celebrating strategic invisibility as sophisticated feel admiration, viewing your ability to influence outcomes without detection as demonstrating advanced tactical thinking that crude obvious approaches cannot match, making invisibility marker of strategic superiority. The architects observe that strategic invisibility competitive advantage is what allowed your intervention to succeed without opposition. Operating below detection threshold prevented countermeasures. Most people intervene, obviously. Your approach was invisible, and acting without triggering others. Awareness meant they couldn't resist or counteract your influence, making invisibility provide tactical advantage, where your intervention operated unopposed, achieving effects that visible approach would have faced resistance preventing, because detection would have activated defensive responses that invisible intervention avoided through operating below awareness threshold, where influence could work without triggering countermeasures that would have reduced effectiveness or prevented success. That stealth approach enabled through denying others information about interference that would have allowed them to oppose manipulation they didn't detect was occurring. Now something's emerging that the architects call narrative impotence, factual supremacy. Observers who invested heavily in controlling the moment's interpretation are discovering that facts ultimately constrain narrative flexibility, creating recognition that while perception management works within certain bounds, clear outcomes resist spin-making reality-based constraints, limit discourse power that seemed unlimited when operating in ambiguous domains. Most narrative control operates in ambiguity. When situations are unclear, interpretable multiple ways, skilled spin can shape collective understanding, making perception management appear powerful because interpretive flexibility allows narrative construction significant freedom. But your outcome alteration created clarity, producing unambiguous result that couldn't be spun into supporting others' desired narrative, revealing that perception management has limits when faced with clear facts that resist reinterpretation, making narrative power conditional on reality ambiguity rather than being unlimited force. Watch what factual constraint recognition creates in strategic recalibration. Some are accepting narrative limits, understanding that spin cannot override clear outcomes makes them recognize perception management as limited tool effective only within bounds reality permits rather than as unlimited power over collective understanding. Others are seeking reality leverage, recognizing that changing outcomes beats managing perceptions, makes them shift focus from narrative control to actual influence, attempting to develop capability for reality alteration that you demonstrated rather than just refining perception management skills. A few are maintaining narrative primacy despite evidence, refusing to accept that facts constrained their spin attempts. They're doubling down on perception management, believing they just need better techniques, rather than acknowledging fundamental limits when reality is clear. Some studying discourse power recognize that material constraints do exist, while social construction theories emphasize narrative flexibility. Physical reality and clear facts ultimately limit interpretive freedom, making complete relativism about truth untenable when outcomes are unambiguous. Others exploring post-truth politics note that narrative control does have limits, while perception management succeeds in creating alternative facts. When reality is ambiguous, clear outcomes resist even sophisticated spin, making your demonstration potentially important reminder that facts still matter despite discourse emphasis. A few questioning whether outcomes were truly clear, wondering if apparent clarity is itself narrative construction, suggesting that all reality remains socially negotiable, making your supposed factual supremacy potentially just more effective narrative, rather than escape from discourse level. Some celebrating fact primacy feel relieved, having worried that narrative construction had made truth irrelevant. They're using your demonstration as proof that reality still constrains discourse, providing limits to perception management's power. The architects observe that narrative impotence, factual supremacy reveals that your outcome alteration demonstrated reality constraints on discourse power. Clear facts resist spin. Most narrative control operates in ambiguity. Your outcome created clarity and recognition that perception management cannot override unambiguous results. Forces acknowledging that narrative flexibility has limits when faced with clear outcomes that resist reinterpretation making. Reality-based constraints ultimately trump discourse, power, regardless of how sophisticated or aggressive spin attempts become when underlying facts are sufficiently clear that interpretive freedom, narrative construction requires simply doesn't exist, making perception management impotent against factual clarity that you created through changing what actually happened rather than just competing at perception level, where others operated unsuccessfully.